What's up, crew? Happy Friday. Here with Vincent again. And Monday is our 2-rep max deadlift. We're going to go over why we do 2 reps, or why we're testing 2 reps as opposed to 1 reps or 5 reps, and why you should actually try to find your 2-rep max and not just decide to go for a 1-rep max because you feel like it, which sometimes can happen. We go for a 2-rep max, right?
Yeah.
Vince, why do we program a 2-rep max as opposed to a 1-rep max?
Yeah. So we see a number of different strength pieces throughout the year. Everyone's favorites are 1 rep max days. I think that's fair to say. Everyone, or maybe not everybody, but most people, once you get comfortable with a movement, there's not too much more exciting than trying to build to the absolute heaviest weight that you possibly can for 1 rep. It just feels good, and it feels even better when you accomplish a new PR with that number as well. But a lot of times, especially once we get moving forward, very rarely. I mean, the workout last week with 20 double unders and 1 power clean that we did, very, very, very rarely do we ever see 1 rep within a workout, right? Like Wednesday, we saw 21 deadlifts twice. So essentially 42 deadlifts. Today we saw high volume wall balls, things like that. So having strength pieces besides just a raw power 1 rep max number helps us translate better to workouts in the gym is one of the first things.
Mm-hmm.
It helps us better understand when we say days where we say it should be heavy, but you should be able to do 2 to 3 reps at a time. A lot of times, members might only have a 1 rep max listed. They're like, well, how much compared to my 1 rep max should that be? And we'll always give you a estimate of, maybe we're around 70-75%. But guess what? With this 2 rep max deadlift, if we have a heavy deadlift day where you're doing maybe 5 heavy deadlifts around, we might say, hey, it should probably be about 85-90% of that 2 rep max. So on top of just being a better predictor for some workouts, it makes things easier. The more numbers we can have, it makes things easier to judge where we should be at weight wise as well.
What's more difficult, a 1-rep max or a 2-rep max?
It's a good question. A 2-rep max is more difficult,
Right?
Plain and simple. Something like the deadlift, sometimes I honestly feel like with the deadlift, that first rep, if you can get that bar moving, a lot of times you might be able to hang on to it to a 2 rep a little bit easier than, let's say, like a split jerk or even like a back squat. But in general, a 2-rep max is definitely harder.
So I think you just hit on something like really important, right? With the 2-rep max, I think that when we go for a 2-rep max rather than like a 1-rep max, just because we're already under tension, right? That second rep, a lot of times it feels easier, right? Or it feels like we can do it, right? If we're always going for like a 1-rep max, there becomes these like mental barriers that are put in place where like, this is my 1-rep max. This is the only thing I test. If we're doing a 2-rep max and you happen to be building like to your 1 rep, or you get within like 10 pounds of your 1 rep and you pull it for 2, you're like, well, man, what's my 1 rep? Not saying to go for that 1 rep on that day, but it should give you the confidence to know that, hey, if I just pulled like, let's say your 1 rep's 315, right? And you just pulled 300 for 2. You could safely assume that like your 1-rep max might now be 125, 130, maybe
325, 330.
whatever. Yeah, math. It's been a long day.
Yeah, exactly. And like the other thing that, because this is something we don't test as regularly, I feel like a lot of times, myself included, we can get hyped up when we see like a 1 rep max. Like I literally couldn't tell you. I did just finally hit a PR on my clean, but like these like strength cycles, especially with the Olympic lifts for me, I'm always like, man, these feel great. I'm definitely going to PR. And then that 1 rep max day comes up and, just you miss one lift and then you're in your head and you're never hitting anything else. So a lot of times like these 2 rep max, 3 rep max days, there's a lot less pressure, even if you don't necessarily feel pressure with lifts, because you don't really have as recent of numbers or as much data to go off of. A lot of times you're just like, hey, I'm going to lift. I'm going to keep good technique. I'm going to load this bar and see what happens. Whereas, most people, unless you're pretty new, within the last like 3 to 6 months, you probably have 1 rep max numbers from at some point where we did this. So again, we talked a little bit about, just like not necessarily listening to your body. It's something where we're really big on. When there's something like a 2 rep max, 3 rep max, a lot of times that weight is just sort of lifted off our shoulders because we don't have quite as much expectations.
Yeah, and I think you touched on something too. It's like your training age, right? And when we're first starting out, it's like, yeah, we keep going for 1 reps because like we keep getting PRs there. Right? But the longer you train, the harder it is to get a PR really anywhere. But the more variety we add in just for like us making progress, like I want to see progress on my 5 rep, my 4 rep, my 3 rep, my 2 rep, my 1 rep. Right. It doesn't have to be like, hey, I'm just going to keep one. Like the only time I test my strength on a deadlift is like during this 1 rep. It's like really get to a certain point in training. It's like you should probably, if you tested your 1 rep, you should probably at least go test your 3, like build back up and like test your 3 6 months later, test your 5 6 months later, and then 6 months later, go back and test your 1 again. Right. And it's like, yeah, it might be 18 months since you tested your 1 rep max deadlift, but you'll probably see significant gains because you tested these other pieces as well.
Yeah, and it's all part of a puzzle. Everything we do is essentially a puzzle where we're trying to connect as many pieces as possible to become as complete of an athlete as we possibly can. So, thinking about that, that's why our strength looks different when we go through cycles. Again, not that this means a ton, but we saw some 5-3-1 cycles, over the past like 3-ish months, which were great. We saw some pretty good strength numbers and strength increases. Well, this deadlift cluster cycle that we've been in, if we really think back, we weren't really ever, we were working heavy with most of them, but most days, with the exception of this past week, we were hitting at least one double the entire time. Right. So we did 2-2-2, then 2-2-1, then 2-1-1, then finally 1-1-1. So really we've been working and training towards, slightly higher volume than just like maximizing for a 1 rep max. Again, if we were to truly maximize for a 1 rep max, we would be doing very heavy singles with longer rest in between those sets. So again, you guys, whether you believe it or not, we've been training for this 2 rep max. You all are prepared. And the other nice thing, a lot of you might not have a 2 rep max number to go off of. But if you've been in throughout the deadlift cluster cycle, you should have a pretty darn good idea of, whereabouts you're looking to be at.
Yeah. And it's just another thing that, again, you can establish a new personal best on, right? Again, just depending, like you might not be having your best day on Monday when we go and deadlift. And like, if you just go for a 1 rep max, you feel like you're going to feel disappointed if you don't PR because like you didn't meet what you got 4 or 5 months ago, where it's like, well, that's not the intent that we've been training. We haven't been training to increase your 1 rep max deadlift. Like we've been doing it for the 2.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And, like I said, if you were listening last week, you will get to attack that 1 rep max deadlift in about a month or so. We are going to jump back into CrossFit Total in about a month. So, that, essentially ultimate test of strength with a 1 rep max deadlift, a 1 rep max strict press, and a 1 rep max deadlift. So we will be, seeing these things in the future. But again, that's not the intent of, what we're looking for Monday. Again, the other thing that we're going to think about, and you'll hear when you're in class, is just like we don't really want to like when we were doing these clusters, hit a deadlift, drop the bar, take 5 seconds, reset, do our second rep for the set of 2. We want hands on barbells. We want you to maintain tension with that barbell in your hand, keep that barbell moving with these 2 rep maxes as well.
Yeah, I think that's an important to note, right? With like as an Olympic lift, you could say like a double, like a 2 rep max, like you could just drop the barbell, you reset, there's a little bit longer of a gap in between. Like when we're going for a 2 rep max or a 3 rep max or a 5 rep max on a deadlift, like there's no dropping from the, I mean, it would make it exponentially harder if you did this, if you just dropped it from the hip and then tried to
reset, regain tension.
Yeah. It's like, no, just go down into that next rep.
Yeah. And like I said at the beginning, Brooks threw that question out, which is harder, a 1 rep max or a 2 rep max. And, the obvious answer is a 2 rep max, and that is true. But, I know personally, most of the time, if I get the bar moving once, I can most of the time knock out a second rep with it. And again, that comes from tension. We always talk about tension in classes when we're talking about lifts, bracing, squeezing that upper back, making sure everything's tight before we start that pull off the ground. If we can establish that tension and then maintain that tension, a lot of times we can move, through repetitions of whatever movement we're talking about.
And when we're talking about like things being more difficult too, like we have to understand the additional amount of work, like literal like work that we're putting in doing a 2 rep max. Like let's, for easy math, say that you're doing a 1 rep max deadlift, right? And you go 100, 200, 300, right? Like those are just the numbers you did. This would be ridiculous jumps. Don't do that. Let's just say you did that. You lifted a total of what? 600 pounds on that day. Now let's say you're doing doubles and you decide to do the same thing, right? So you do 2 at 200, 2 at 100, 2 at 200, 2 at 300, right? So what is that? 600 pounds alone for the last double that you lifted. You've tied the amount of volume, right? The amount of work you've done compared to all 3 lifts, right? With that in the singles, with the 1 lift of your double at 300, but then you add in that 200. Well, that's another 400 pounds. So now you've lifted 1,000 pounds that day. Then you add in that 100, that's 1,200. You're literally lifting double the amount. Like, I know we just don't think it's so simple. We don't think in these terms. Like you're doing so much more work. Like you're going to feel so much more exhausted after these in the next day. A totally different stimulus for your body.
Yeah. And those of you that have been around, or, attend build regularly, like I'd rather do almost anything than like a 10 rep max lift. It's absolutely like miserable because we talk about time under tension. There's so much time under tension, talk about just volume and loading. It's exponential, where we're just doing 1 rep maxes. Again, 1 rep maxes are so fun because you're working hard, but from a strength perspective. Again, we have different energy systems. We don't need to dive into those right now, but you are not using, you're just using raw power when you hit a 1 rep max. When you get a 2 rep max, you're still pretty much using that, but you might click on, just a little bit of another energy system. Probably not, but maybe. And, once we get into those upper ends, we're not just working in a power perspective. We're breathing. We're working a little bit more oxidative. So your body is responding differently, just like Brooks said, with these different stimuluses.
Yeah, like you'll feel a difference in your heart rate going like with a longer strength piece.
Yeah,
for sure.
So it's gonna be fun. Again, I pulled up Sugar Water right now. I don't know the last time I found a 2 rep max deadlift. So it's something that, I'm looking forward to. And, most of you probably are going to put up some good numbers with this. And guess what? If you hit your two rep max for your 1 rep max, congrats, you're stronger.
You're larger. Yeah. And it gives you something that gives you something to shoot for when we go into the CrossFit Total as well.
Exactly. Yeah. 2 rep max. Let's see. We're back to at least 2020.
Yeah. Yeah. So pre-pandemics. New PRs for everybody coming up.
For sure.
What do we got as programming for next week, aside from the 2-rep max deadlift?
Yeah, so 2-rep max deadlift is going to be, starting off the week right on Monday. So hopefully you guys are feeling good. Carry on with the split jerk. So we'll be happy some singles, so you don't have to worry about bringing that weight down and crashing on to your collarbones quite as much. So we'll work through 5 sets of some singles on the split jerk. Carry on with our box squats. So knocking off another rep there, knocking off clean pull and keeping on with that clean pull, clean complex we saw. So a lot of familiar elements if you were in this week. We'll see again as far as strength portion goes. And again, still focusing on technique, still focusing on those good reps. I know I've heard a lot of good feedback. People are enjoying the box squats. So happy to, again, changing up that stimulus, still doing what we're talking about, but having some fun with that. So looking forward to the strength pieces. I know everything is named, and we talked about how, some things are true benchmarks. Upstream is one of those true benchmarks that we're going to see on Tuesday. So we've done this one. I think this will be the 3rd time we've done upstream, but it's an increasing ladder, 2 shoulder to overhead, 2 calories on the row, and the reps increase by 2 every round. So it goes 2-2, 4-4, 6-6, 8-8, so forth. It's a fun workout. Overall, I really like that test piece. Kind of a max effort workout with some body weight, some jump rope, sit-ups, push-ups. I know we haven't seen thrusters in a little while, but everyone's favorite thruster we see this week in the meat grinder.
That's a great name for that workout. It's like exactly what it's like. Yeah, even like looking at like with benchmark being like, what we consider like a true upstream. The nice part of us naming these workouts, guys, is like it allows you to kind of pick and choose like what you want your personal benchmarks to be. Because in all reality, aside from like traditional strength pieces and like the CrossFit Total, but the benchmarks we choose are pretty arbitrary. Like they're just like well-rounded workouts that we enjoy. But like really, like everyone should have their own personal benchmarks that they measure themselves by. So like if you have a workout that like you really love and like you want that to be your test piece, when we do it, just make a note of that for yourself in SugarWOD. They're like, hey, this is one of my personal test pieces.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a good point. And, I think it evolves as well as you stick around. True benchmarks for you are going to change. Fran's a good example, in my opinion. I know you're probably sick of hearing everything reverted back to Fran. But
I use this exact example with Chris on the Two Brain podcast. I did. Yeah, go ahead.
But it's such a good example of a test piece because everyone knows what it is. Again, for us, that's your final workout of the on-ramp. So most of the time, you're doing a pretty light weight that you're going to be breathing pretty heavy with some jumping pull-ups or ring rows. You then evolve, and the second time you do it, you are almost always using heavier weight. And most of the time still, scaling those pull-ups. And then the third time, you're starting to get the pull-ups down. So, you might hold the weight steady, but factor in some pull-ups, and then you get to the point where, I'm going to, finally try to RX this maybe a year, 2 years down the road, whatever. You RX Fran, but you're above 5 minutes. So then sub 5 is your goal. And then eventually you get to the point where you're just like, I've RX Fran, I've done it under 5 minutes. Does it really matter if I can get under 4 minutes? Does it really matter if I can get under 3 minutes?
And for like somebody like you, what would it take for you to get faster at Fran? That's what I'm saying, like, right? So it's like when you've been in it for so long, it's like, how are you going to get faster? Like, what are you going to do to get faster at Fran? Right? Yeah. I'm sure there's workouts that you look at now and you're like, all right, like maybe this is something that I'm not as good at, right?
Yeah.
That like, absolutely. Okay, now this is my testing piece to see if I actually got better in this domain. And when we do Fran, if I'm within 20 to 30 seconds of my previous time, like I'm happy.
Yeah. Yeah. Or, we simply, I know it's a level up opportunity, but we had the level up opportunity of chest to bar. So all of a sudden that becomes a much harder workout. And then
Yep.
maybe you shoot for that 5-minute Fran with a harder movement. Or last time, I used 115, which sucks, but Fran used to be something I look forward to. I bet I was a benchmark for me. I'm over it. I kind of, I've moved on to other things. So I think that's a great point, is to, choose things that are benchmarks for you, but then, be okay to grow out of it as well. Goals change, bodies change, things like that.
If I were looking at it like these named workouts, I would say like, all right, I'm going to go through these and I'm going to say, all right, I'm going to pick two. I'm going to pick one benchmark that like one of these workouts that I'm awesome at, that I know that I'm going to crush. Right. And then I'm going to pick another one that I suck at. And like, this is my nightmare. Right. And let's see, like, and those would be my two.
Yeah. So everyone's choosing Echo Vision.
Yeah.
That's everyone's favorite, I know.
But like the double under run one that we did, like it would take a ton for me to get faster at that.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I would have to sprint the 400s.
Yeah. I mean, another example, as we're rattling them off, like Helen used to be my favorite benchmark. Which for those of you who don't know, Helen, 5 rounds, right? No, 3 rounds. 3 rounds, 400-meter run, 21 kettlebell swings, 12 pull-ups.
Yep.
And again, I loved it because when I first started CrossFit, endurance was my strong suit. And the runs were easy, swings naturally were okay, and then, get through the pull-ups. As Brooks was saying, that workout is so miserable now because the only way to get better is to like all out sprint, which is miserable and is not very fun because I'm not as fast as I used to be.
You're a lot stronger though.
A lot stronger, but not faster. So yeah, that's a great point with these workouts. If you do really enjoy one, whether it's, I was really good at this, so I enjoy it because we all enjoy being good at things, or this workout really sucks, but it's something that I want to improve upon, those are great things to make note of in there. Again,
absolutely. Yeah.
That's why we put names on these, so that, we can track things and be specific towards your individual goals.
Yep, for sure. All right, guys. Not a ton of real announcements except for Pride shirt pre-order is on the front desk. That'll be there for about 2 weeks. We're gonna hope to get those in by the second week of June. So about another probably like 10 to 14 days on that pre-order there. All you do is sign up, put your size, name, size, whether you want a t-shirt or a tank. Ladies, there's samples of the new style of tanks that we're getting at the front desk. There's a small and a large, so you can try one of those on to see what best fits you. Also, we have Murph coming up Memorial Day Monday, again, 9 a.m. Something you feel free to bring family and friends to. You can do it as a partner. You can do it by yourself. You can do it as a team of 4. Really, it's just important that you do it and you come and you have a great time with it.
Yeah. And believe sign-up's on MindBody already. So feel free to go ahead, sign right into that class if you plan on attending.
And I'm still looking for a partner to do it unpartitioned with. Jim said we can do it unpartitioned together, not as a team, just like both of us do it. I was like, I've already done that. I don't want to do that again.
Jim is made for Murph. If you could cut the run out, Murph would be Jim's favorite workout, and he might do it once a week.
Yeah, that's great. All right, guys. Well, thank you. Have a great weekend, and we will see you guys on Monday for deadlifts.
See you then.
Later.